Welcome back to the program. It's the verdict on day 4 of our robust election coverage of the 2019 elections. And I just have a bit of housekeeping, let me call it that way, that I need to do before we launch into our next set of conversations now. So I did talk about the documentaries that you should look out for. Problem is I didn't give you a time. So Muhammadu Buhari, the man behind the persona, will be immediately following the news at 10. And Atiku's footprints will come up immediately after the verdict. Remember, we said we're closing a little bit earlier so that we can incorporate a bit more information from the field. So Muhammadu Buhari, the man behind the persona, immediately after the news at 10, and Atiku's footprints immediately after the verdict. I'm still following what's going on social media on our hashtag, the verdict. A lot of people are raising up their PVCs and saying, I'm ready for Saturday. Somebody actually said to me, or said to us, my PVC is warming and it will be very hot on that day. Interesting, and that's coming in from Kogi State. We have others coming in from the North region as well, saying, who's watching me? Here I am holding my PVC. Okay, now let's run through something that we're very proud to launch here on Channels Television. For the first time, we're trying to launch something called our new technology, a hologram. And we'll show you what it looks like in a couple of minutes. And this is supposed to give you more information from the field and from in studio. Instead of talking about it, let's see what it looks like. Let's see the hologram.
That I'm physically in Abuja, but yes. Right there I'm with you in the studio. It's an amazing thing, and it's the first time it's happening this side of the world. What they call hologram and live TV. That's revolutionary. Yes, well, yes. About the atmosphere in Abuja, and you know, it is the first time in the history of our country.
And who you can see there is Dexter, who is the man behind the hologram. That's what we like to call him. Transported there from Abuja into Lagos. So stick with us. We have so many interesting things for you coming up on our live coverage of the election. So you can see Dexter there trying to talk to, I believe that's Kayode and Anne.
Anne, yes.
Yes, that's right, in our Lagos studio. And this is just a taste of what is to come as we use this technology to bring you a lot more data, a lot of statistics, live reports, and live results as well. Okay, let's expand the conversation now. I have with me here the man I like to call the man with the numbers. Channels TV's well, should I call you consultant now?
Yes, indeed.
That's right, Babajide Ogunsowo.
Thank you so much, Ladi.
You've been listening to our conversation, and one thing that cuts across is the amount of numbers that we see. And no one has yet been able to tell me whether the numbers we see translate into the results on the day.
So here's what I'll tell you. The number one question on the lips of Nigerians is, who will win? And hopefully, if we have enough time, I'll give you some insight about that. But before we answer that question, we should ask ourselves, what exactly is going on with this voters register? As at 2015, we had 68 million people on that INEC database. Now we have 84 million, a growth of over 50 million new registered voters. But here's the truth, laddie. If you pick up INEC's voter database, 68 million in 2015 to 84 million today, what does it mean? It means 8 out of 10 names that are on today's register are the same names that were in the 2015 register. You heard me right.
That's right.
8 out of 10 names. So in simple terms, those that decided the fate of Muhammadu Buhari in 2015 will be the same ones that will decide. Let's look at one state, for instance, Kano. 2015, 4.9 million voters, 4.9 million registered voters. That has increased to 5.5 million registered voters. But again, here's what it means. 9 out of 10 names on today's database in Kano, 9 out of 10 names are the same names that were in the 2015 database. And so while everybody focuses on Kano, we should ask ourselves, will the voters that voted in Kano for Muhammadu Buhari in 2015 change their mind?
But you were listening to the conversation. You heard Mrs. Madumere there talk about the fact that a lot of young people have joined that register who perhaps didn't vote in 2015. So if you say 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 is the same amount of names, What about that group of people who turned 18 and have pushed themselves into the register?
A lot of Nigerians have always been on the database. And so more than half of the names on that database have always been Nigerian youth, below the age of 35. So nothing significant has changed. What is the fact? What is the statement of fact is those that decided the 2015 election will be those that will decide the election, 2019 election. But listen carefully to this. Something happened 4 decades ago. 1979, just 3 months to the election, the University of Lagos had done a survey. What was the question they had asked Nigerians?
Who is your candidate? Or do you know your candidate?
Do you know your candidate? And here's the shocking fact. Only 3 out of 10 Nigerians knew their candidates as at 1979. And that was, Ladi, when we only had 5 candidates.
5 candidates, that's right.
Now, what will happen if we ask Nigerians, now that we have 73 candidates, can you name
your candidate?
Your candidates?
Beyond the first 5.
Beyond the first 5. That is the challenge. And now we also know people are talking about Nigerians are not coming out to vote. Today we have 102 million eligible Nigerians. And by eligible, we're talking about Nigerians that are above the age of 18. 102 million of them. Only 84 million have registered. So the question of today is, where are the remaining 18 million Nigerians? And I have the answer for you. In fact, an organization called Dahlia provides us the answer. Because in June last year, they conducted a research. Now, what was in that research? They had asked citizens in 50 countries, Nigeria included. They had asked those citizens, do you have a voice when it comes to politics? And when they asked Nigerians, do you have a voice when it comes to politics? Only 46% of them say they think they have a voice.
Okay, Jide, I'm going to come back to you, but let me toss it over to Abuja. I understand that Ajijola Abiodun is back with us, an election observer, and he gave us a lot of figures the other day. I'm not going to come to you straight. Just listen to what Babajide has said. But who I will come to is we've since been joined by a retired security expert, that's a retired Major General, security expert Cecil Esekaigbe. Thanks a lot for joining us on the program. So I'm going to start with you, sir. And we've been talking about what could prevent a voter from coming out, possible voter apathy. As one who is familiar with security issues, what do you think could stop a voter who was willing, who had this PVC, this golden PVC that's so difficult to get? What could make him have a second thought and say, you know what, no?
Well, maybe the unguided utterances of some politicians who are scaremongering. Some people who are desirous to vote will now look at those threats that are coming from different directions and some false paths, by some other people who are trying to strike fears into their heart to say, oh, I'm going to do this on that day, even when it's very clear that you do not have, the locals to do what you want to do, and you do not even have any reason to do what you want to do. Bringing those threats will scare the potential voters. So that may make some people stay at home and say, look, let me save my head.
And you heard the president in his broadcast today talk about security because it's something that has been in the news and is the concern of many. And you heard him there saying, his government or this administration will do everything they can to ensure that the elections are conducted under a peaceful atmosphere. Does that give you any more confidence?
Yes, it gives me some level of confidence, but it is one thing to give the orders from the top, and for those people who are going to implement the orders at the lower level, it depends on the level of training and the sensitization that will be given to them, so that there will be no disconnect between the higher authorities' intention and what those guys on the ground are going to do.
Okay, let me come to you, Mr. Ajijola. I mean, you've been listening to us, and we heard Babajide talk about the fact that perhaps 8 out of 10 people on the register are the same people that voted in 2015, and he gave an instance of Kano State as well. Is that the way you see it? I mean, I'm not saying counter what he said, but since you're a man of figures yourself, is that the way you see the register as it stands now?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. You see, what you have to look at is what is the increase in the register, both as an increase in terms of the whole country, and then an increase in terms of the states. So, yes, you might have a state where the increase is not so high, and in this situation, if, for example, a state has had an increase in the voter registration figure of just about 10 or 20%, then of course it is, logically, mathematically, it means that if you had 100,000 people there, or 80,000 is now 100,000, you increased it by 20,000, then it means that out of the 100,000, 80,000 were those that were there initially and 20,000 came in. So, I mean, even at the national level, we have 14.2 million added to the 68 million initially and the 84. So, of course, it means that 68 million are still there and 14.2 million are there. This is, of course, this is what it means. But if you go across the states, you find out that the rate of registration was not the same all over the country. Kano had the lowest rate of registration in the entire country. In 2015, Kano was one of the largest, in fact, the largest state with the largest population in the country, and even much, I mean, bigger than Lagos. But today, Lagos has about 6.5 million and over 1 million more than what Kano has. So what has happened is that in the northwest geopolitical zone, the registration has only been 14.4%, which is the lowest nationwide. Then the highest actually came from the north central, which was 36%, and then the southeast was 31%, and the south 27%. And I think Anambra is the second fastest or highest increase, has the second highest increase in the country. So what this shows you is that unlike 2015, and it makes sense politically and mathematically and logically, that when you have a person in power and then there is a desire for a change from, maybe a stronger desire for a change from parts of the country, it will show up in the registration because more people are energized to register from that part of the country. And we had a reverse case in 2015 where we had a higher registration for the northern part of the country. You know, so for me, that now makes sure that you have a much larger influx of voters from these new areas. So, for example, Kano that have 14.4%, Northwest that has 14.4%, has just a few new set of voters. But the Southeast that has 31% has 1/3 extra voters, you know, to toy with in this election, which is of a strategic advantage for the region.
Now, General, before we come back to Jide in Lagos, I want to ask you this, and it comes from the viewpoint that security is going to be the difference between whether people come out and vote. We can do the analysis, we can do the statistics of turnout and so on, but that if the security, which the president talked about this evening in his broadcast to the country, is not airtight, it's not seen to be there, it's not visible, and it's not effective, then a lot of people are going to stay away, particularly those who were iffy about voting in the first place. Now, in what you have seen so far, I mean, let's look at it on what is on the field. The stats that we have indicate that about 850,000 security personnel are going to be deployed across 36 states. Now, that sounds like a lot if you look at the figure. But if you look at how they're going to be deployed across the country, it doesn't seem like a lot, does it?
Thank you. Certainly, it's not a lot. If you look at the vastness of the country, and if you look at the number of polling units, and the number of local governments that are involved in this election, you know that 800 people is just significant. But it depends on the deployment and the management of the security forces. For example, if you know, you have to map out what they call intelligence mapping to look at the areas of flashpoints and look at the areas where you are going to concentrate. You look at the areas of likely, you know, places where trouble can easily spring out. You concentrate on deployment in those areas. Then you look at some areas that are relatively stable, you know, then you can, you know, deploy less personnel in those areas. But again, the enthusiasm, you know, the interest, you know, the patriotism would make the difference.
Indeed. And I was looking at a particular report from 2015 and even in 2011. And in that report on the situation, in the security situation at that time, it says there's a direct link between the violence that you see and the violence that breaks out. There's a direct link between that and the number of people that actually come out to vote. And why I'm bringing this up is because we're trying to estimate how many people will we have on Saturday come out. But what do you think? Do you think that that has reduced now between 2011 and 2015? Do you think that now that we're in 2019, this security concern will not be an issue in terms of how many people will actually come out on Saturday?
It will not be a major issue like 2015 because a lot of sensitization has gone on with those security agencies that are going to participate. And people that, participated, in 2015 election that actually, precipitated those violence, some of them were dealt with. And I also remember some of the military guys, that were found wanting in these election duties were sanctioned appropriately. So bearing in mind the sanctions, the sensitization, and the consciousness that there is always, consequence for every action that is not accepted, will make everybody to sit tight, and the security people will be able to do their job. But I also want a situation where you'll be able to identify the real security people than those who will just come in and wear uniform and look as if they are security men. So something like identification tags to know who are really, these people. Are they really true security agencies, or they are just people who are wearing uniforms in the guise of security? So if we're able to decipher these differences, I think there will be an appreciable effort security-wise.
Okay, but Babajide, let me come back to you. And I'm going to ask this because you're personal figures again. You look at the total number of people that register, it goes by half when it comes to those who want to turn out. I'm going to have to put that question on pause and ask you that question when we come back. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back to analyze Saturday when we come back.